Picture this: a dusty binder on a shelf, 3 inches thick, filled with charts and projections that were obsolete the moment they were printed. The title on the spine reads Business Plan. It's a document that a frazzled founder spent 3 sleepless weeks writing, only to have a venture capitalist glance at the first page for 30 seconds before tossing it aside. This is the image that comes to mind for so many when they hear those 2 words: a chore, a formality, a relic. But what if I told you that this document, so often misunderstood and maligned, is actually the closest thing an entrepreneur has to a crystal ball, a compass, and a master key all rolled into one? What if the true power of a business plan has absolutely nothing to do with the printed binder and everything to do with the grueling, clarifying, and transformative process of creating it? We live in an age that glorifies the pitch deck, the flashy 10-slide presentation designed to dazzle and secure funding in minutes. We celebrate the pivot, the hustle, the idea of building the plane while it's flying. In this whirlwind of startup culture, deep strategic planning can seem, well, a little boring, a little old-fashioned. But here's the secret. The entrepreneurs who build things that last, the ones who navigate the inevitable storms and don't just survive but thrive, they understand something profound. They know that a great business plan isn't a static map. It's a living, breathing navigational system. It's the tool they use to make tough decisions when everything is on the line. It's the blueprint that keeps the entire team building the same house. Welcome to a new episode from English Plus Podcast, my friends. I'm Danny, and today we are pulling that dusty binder off the shelf, blowing it off, and dissecting it. We're going to explore the anatomy of a truly great business plan, not as a boring academic exercise, but as a vital weapon in any entrepreneur's arsenal. We're going to ask the burning questions. What's the real difference between a business plan and a pitch deck? And why do you desperately need both? How can you write financial projections that aren't just a work of creative fiction? What is the one section of the plan that most founders get wrong, but that investors care about most? And most importantly, how does the act of planning itself forge the clarity and resilience needed to actually succeed? This isn't just for aspiring billionaires or tech moguls. This is for anyone with an idea, whether it's a side hustle, a nonprofit, a creative project, or a full-blown enterprise. The principles of strategic planning are universal, and while listening to this episode won't magically write your plan for you, because true knowledge and success are never found in shortcuts, believe me, but in the diligent work of research and application. But this episode will give you the framework, the language, and the inspiration to start building your vision on a foundation of rock, not sand. So grab a metaphorical pen and paper. It's time to draft your blueprint for success. I'm Danny, and this is a new episode from English Plus Podcast. All right. Let's get one thing straight from the outset. A business plan is not a pitch deck. A pitch deck is a trailer. A business plan is the full-length feature film. A pitch deck is designed for seduction. It's visual, punchy, and meant to get you a second date with an investor. A business plan is designed for a long-term relationship. It's the document that proves you've actually thought through the nitty-gritty details and aren't just selling smoke and mirrors. The most common mistake people make is thinking the goal of writing a business plan is to have a finished business plan. Well, it's not. The real value is in the process. It's a forced meditation. It compels you to answer the tough questions you've been avoiding. It's the act of translating a fuzzy, beautiful dream in your head into a coherent, logical strategy on paper. That process is where the magic happens. It's where you find the fatal flaws in your logic before you've invested your life savings. General Eisenhower famously said, "Plans are useless, but planning is indispensable." That is the soul of what we're talking about today. So let's perform an autopsy, or perhaps more optimistically, an anatomy lesson on a great business plan. What are its essential parts? First up, the executive summary. This is without a doubt the most important section. It's the very first thing anyone reads, and if it isn't brilliant, well, it will be the last. Well, the executive summary is a concise, compelling overview of the entire plan. It should be able to stand on its own and give the reader the complete picture: what your business does, what problem it solves, who your customers are, how you'll make money, and why your team is the one to do it. Now, here's the catch: you have to write it last. Only after you've wrestled with every other section can you effectively summarize it. Think of it as the abstract of a scientific paper, a powerful, distilled version of the whole. Next is the company description. Now, this is where you lay out the soul of your business. What is your mission? What is your vision for the future? What are your core values? This isn't just fluffy, feel-good language. This section defines your company's identity. It guides your culture and your decision-making. It also details the nuts and bolts: your legal structure, are you an LLC, a corporation, etc., your location, and the brief history of how your idea came to be. It answers the question, who are we? Then we move into the market analysis. This is where you prove you haven't been living in a cave. You need to demonstrate a deep understanding of the industry you're entering. How big is the market? Is it growing or shrinking? What are the current trends? Crucially, you need to define your target market with obsessive detail. Everyone is not a target market. Women aged 25 to 40 who live in urban areas, value sustainability, and have a disposable income of over $2,000 a month, now that's a target market. This section also includes your competitive analysis. Who are your competitors? What are their strengths and weaknesses? This is where a SWOT analysis, that means strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, is invaluable. How are you going to be different and better? Following that is organization and management. An idea is worth nothing without the people to execute it. The section is all about the who. It outlines your organizational structure and, most importantly, introduces your key team members. For each person, you highlight their expertise, their track record, and why their specific skills are critical to making this venture a success. Investors often say they bet on the jockey, not the horse. This is the section where you show them you have a team of A players. And now for the main event, your products or services. Now, here you go into detail about what you are actually selling. What problem does it solve for your customer? What are its features and benefits? What makes it unique? This is where you define your value proposition, which means the unique promise of value you offer to your customers that your competitors cannot. Do you compete on price, quality, convenience, or some other factor? You should also discuss your product's life cycle. Are you launching with a minimum viable product, an MVP? How will you gather feedback and iterate? Do you have any proprietary technology or trade secrets that give you an edge? Of course, a great product is useless if no one knows about it. That's why the marketing and sales strategy section is next. This is your game plan for reaching your target market and persuading them to buy. How will you create awareness? That's your marketing plan. Will you use social media, content marketing, paid ads, public relations? And how will you convert that awareness into sales? And that's your sales strategy. Will you have an e-commerce site, a direct sales team, a retail presence? This section needs to be specific with actionable steps and measurable goals. It's the engine that will drive your revenue. And that brings us to the section that gives most people hives: the financial projections. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road. You need to translate all of your strategic plans into numbers. This typically includes an income statement, a cash flow statement, and a balance sheet projected out for 3 to 5 years. You need to be optimistic, but grounded in reality. Your projections should be built on clear, defensible assumptions. Don't just say, we'll capture 5% of the market in year 3. Explain how. How many sales calls will that take? What will your marketing spend be to achieve that level of market penetration? This section tells the story of whether your business model is actually viable and potentially scalable. It shows investors when they can expect a return on their investment, and it shows you when you might run out of cash, which is the number one reason businesses fail. This isn't about being a psychic, it's about doing your due diligence and creating a financial roadmap. And finally, you might have an appendix, which is the place for all the supporting documents: resumes of key team members, permits, market research data, product photos, etc. Putting this all together is a Herculean task, but once you have it, you possess something incredibly powerful. It's a tool you can use to secure a loan or attract investment, yes, but more importantly, it becomes your internal guide. When a new opportunity arises, you can ask, does this align with our plan? When a crisis hits, you have a baseline to return to. It allows you to mitigate risk because you've already thought through a dozen potential failure points. And when you inevitably have to pivot, which means to change your strategy in response to market feedback, you're not just guessing. You're making an informed change based on the solid foundation of research and strategy you've already built. Well, my friends, the business plan is not a static document. It's a dynamic tool for thinking. In a world that moves at a breakneck pace, taking the time to plan, to think deeply, and to build a strategy is not a weakness. It's your greatest competitive advantage. Well, my friends, this is in a nutshell what a business plan is, or what it should be. But of course, as I told you earlier, this is not enough. This is just an introduction. One podcast episode, no matter how good it is, cannot tell you everything about this. You will need to dig in a little deeper, do your own research, read sample business plans for successful businesses, and see how they did it, and learn from them. But with that being said, we've come to the end of our topic for today, but not the end of our episode, because next we're going to focus on language. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. Okay, let's pump the brakes for a moment. That was a dense crash course in business strategy. But hidden within all that practical advice is some incredibly powerful and versatile vocabulary. Mastering these words won't just help you write a business plan, it will help you sound more articulate and professional in almost any context. So let's zoom in and break some of these down. Now let's start with the term viable. We talked about creating a minimum viable product, an MVP, and determining if your business model is viable. Now, viable means capable of working successfully, feasible. So if an idea is viable, it has a real chance of succeeding. This is a fantastic word to use when you're evaluating any kind of plan, not just a business plan. You could ask a friend, for example, is your plan to drive to the concert, find free parking right out front, and get in without a ticket actually viable? Or in a work meeting, you could say, we have 3 proposed solutions, but I'm not sure all of them are financially viable. It's a sophisticated way to question whether something is practical or realistic. Next up, we got value proposition. Now, we said this is the unique promise of value you offer. It's the core reason why a customer should choose you. For example, our value proposition is that we offer the highest quality at the lowest price. But this concept extends far beyond selling products. When you apply for a job, you are essentially presenting your personal value proposition. What unique combination of skills, experience, and personality do you bring that no other candidate does? You could even think about it in relationships. For example, what's my value proposition as a friend? I'm a great listener and I always have snacks. It's about understanding and articulating your unique worth. So that's about value propositions, my friends. Next, let's talk about scalable. Now, we asked if your business model is scalable. A business is scalable if it can handle a large increase in customers or sales without a proportional increase in costs. For example, a software company is highly scalable. Selling to 10,000 customers isn't much more expensive than selling to 100. A private tutoring business, on the other hand, isn't very scalable because you always need to add another person for each new client. Now, you can use this word to describe systems or processes. For example, the current filing system works for our small team, but it's not scalable. We'll need a new solution if the company grows. All right, that's about scalable. Then there's that famous business buzzword, pivot. Now, we mentioned that when you have to pivot, you're not just guessing. Well, to pivot means to make a fundamental change in strategy when you realize your original plan isn't working. A company might pivot from selling to consumers to selling to businesses. This word has completely entered mainstream language. You can talk about a career pivot. For example, after 10 years in finance, she decided to pivot and become a chef. Or even a social pivot. For example, I realized the conversation was getting too heated, so I decided to pivot to a lighter topic. It means making a strategic shift in direction. Next, let's look at due diligence. Now, we said financial projections require you to do your due diligence. Well, this is a legal and business term that means taking reasonable steps to satisfy a legal requirement, especially in buying or selling something. It's essentially doing your homework. Before you buy a house, you do due diligence by getting an inspection. Before an investor gives you money, they perform due diligence by investigating every aspect of your business. You can use it in a more casual sense too, of course. You can say, I did my due diligence before buying this car. I read all the reviews and checked its maintenance history. It means you've been thorough and careful. So that was about due diligence. Next, let's talk about mitigate risk. A great business plan helps you mitigate risk. To mitigate something means to make it less severe, serious, or painful. So, to mitigate risk is to take steps to reduce the potential for loss or failure. You can mitigate risk in your life in many ways. You wear a seatbelt to mitigate the risk of injury in an accident. You buy travel insurance to mitigate the risk of financial loss if your trip is canceled. It's a very professional way of saying reduce the chance of bad things happening. All right, that was about mitigate risk. Next, let's talk about proprietary. We asked if you have any proprietary technology. Proprietary means relating to an owner or ownership. If something is proprietary, it's owned by a particular person or a company and its use is restricted. The formula for Coca-Cola is proprietary. The software code for Windows is proprietary. It implies a secret or a protected asset. You might say, for example, the restaurant is famous for its proprietary spice blend. It signals something unique and exclusive. Another useful phrase is market penetration. Now, we use it when talking about financial projections. Market penetration is a measure of how much a product or service is being used by customers compared to the total estimated market for that product. If you want to increase your market penetration, you want to gain a large share of the market. It's a bit jargony, I know, but very useful in a business context. For example, we can say, our goal for next year is to increase market penetration in the European market. And now let's grab another one from the startup world, bootstrap. Well, I know I didn't talk about it. I didn't explicitly say bootstrap, but it's essential to the topic. Now, to bootstrap a company means to start it with little capital, funding it from personal finances or from the revenues it generates. It's the opposite of taking on investor money. It's about being scrappy and self-reliant. For example, she bootstrapped her clothing brand from a small Etsy shop into $1 million business. Well, this word has a heroic, resourceful connotation. And finally, let's look at that classic analysis tool, SWOT, the SWOT analysis. Now, we mentioned doing a SWOT analysis on your competitors. Now, SWOT, SWOT, stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's a framework for strategic planning. Now, while it's a business tool, you can absolutely apply it to your own life. You can do a personal SWOT analysis when considering a career change. What are your strengths, experience, or skills? What are your weaknesses? Lack of certain certification, maybe. What are the opportunities? Maybe a growing industry. What are the threats? Like high competition for jobs, or for this specific job that you are seeking. It's a powerful way to organize your thoughts for any major decision. So, there you have it, my friends. Viable, value proposition, scalable, pivot, due diligence, mitigate risk, proprietary, market penetration, bootstrap, and SWOT. These words are your new toolkit for sounding like a strategic thinker. And that brings us perfectly to our speaking challenge. In the world of business, you often don't have 30 pages to explain your idea. Sometimes you only have 30 seconds. Well, this is the art of the elevator pitch. The idea is you find yourself in an elevator with a key person, and you have until their floor to sell them on your idea. A great elevator pitch has 4 parts. First, the problem. Start by stating the problem you solve and make it relatable. For example, You know how frustrating it is when, whatever the problem is, of course. And then the solution. Briefly describe your business or idea as the solution to that problem. And then move on to the value proposition. What makes you special? Your secret sauce, if you will. Now, this is where you can use words like proprietary if you have it. And finally, the ask or hook. What do you want? Or what's the compelling vision? For example, we're looking for partners, or imagine a world where whatever your vision is. So remember those 4 key parts: the problem, the solution, the value proposition, the ask or hook. So here's your challenge. Take an idea. It could be a real business you dream of, a project at work, or even just a passion you want to share. Craft a 60-second elevator pitch for it using that 4-part structure. Try to weave in at least 2 of the vocabulary words we discussed today. And to make the most of it, of course, record it on your phone. Listen to it. You will know if it is awkward, and you will be able to make it better. The goal, of course, isn't to be perfect. The goal is to practice being clear, concise, and compelling. It's a skill that will make you more persuasive in every area of your life. All right? That was about our language section, but we're not done. We still have our discussion questions because remember, anything you learn or listen to is not enough and does not add a lot of value to your knowledge or even your English, of course, in this case, because we're English Plus Podcast after all, if you don't talk about it, if you don't discuss with friends, with family members, with anyone who's interested, someone at work, someone you know, discuss with me. I'm always interested. You can reach me on the website, on my Patreon page. And when I say my Patreon page, don't be afraid. I'm not asking you to come to my Patreon page and pay money. You can become free members on my Patreon page. And that will allow you to join the community, to be part of this small community, to have direct contact with me. And of course, for me to have direct contact with you, you don't have to pay any money. Of course, whenever you decide to become patrons at any tier you want, I'd appreciate it, but that's not mandatory. You can go there, we can talk about it as much as you want. And we can talk about it there if you find nobody else you want to talk to, or of course, if you would like to talk about this with me. But anyway, let's talk about these discussion questions. We've broken down the what and the how of a business plan, but the why and what if are where the most interesting conversations happen. That's your part. Now, I want to know what you think. Now, here are a few questions to get the gears turning and to get a great discussion going. Let me start with the plan versus the pivot. Are business plans obsolete? Many legendary companies from YouTube to Slack ended up succeeding with a business model that was completely different from their original plan. Does this prove that detailed long-term planning is a waste of time in a fast-changing world? Well, think about this. Is the value of the plan in its accuracy or in the strategic thinking it forces? How can a founder stay committed to a vision while remaining flexible enough to pivot when necessary? But discuss the tension between a plan as a rigid roadmap versus a flexible compass. Next, let's talk about financial fantasies. Is it art or science? Now, the financial projections section of a business plan is often called the most important, yet also the most fictional. How can an entrepreneur create financial projections that are both ambitious and credible? Now, think about this. Where is the ethical line between optimistic forecasting and misleading investors? Should founders be held accountable if their projections turn out to be wildly inaccurate? Now, consider the role of assumptions in financial modeling. And next, let's talk about the jockey versus the horse debate. Now, many investors say we bet on the team, not the idea. How much weight should be given to the organization and management section of a business plan compared to the product or market analysis? Now, think about this. Could an A-plus team succeed with a B-minus idea? Could a B-minus team succeed with an A-plus idea? If you were an investor, what would you look for in a founding team that might not show up on a resume? And now let's move to the next question. It's about the bootstrap challenge. Is investor money always a good thing? Well, that's a big question. Our culture often glorifies venture capital funding as the ultimate sign of success. But many thriving businesses are bootstrapped. Now, what are the major pros and cons of bootstrapping versus seeking outside investment? Think about this. Consider the impact on control, speed of growth, and pressure to exit. When does it make strategic sense to give up equity for capital? When is it smarter to grow more slowly but retain 100% ownership? Well, you tell me. I'm sure you have a lot of insight, and I bet many of you know about this a lot more than I do. Because what am I, after all? I'm a content creator. Yes, of course, I'm interested in a lot of things. I'm enthusiastic about a lot of topics, and I have expertise in many other topics, but I can definitely learn a lot from you. Anyway, that brings me to the last question, and this one is about your personal business plan. Now, the principles of a business plan, mission, analysis, strategy, resource management can be applied to our own careers and lives. If you were to write a business plan for me, what would be the most challenging section to write and why? Now, think about this. Would it be defining your personal value proposition, conducting an honest SWOT analysis of yourself, creating 5-year financial or life goal projections? Share what part of this strategic thinking you find most difficult when applying it to yourself. Well, I can't wait to read your insight, or of course, just talk about it. And remember, my friends, the best learning happens in the exchange of diverse perspective. So head over to my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com, or to my Patreon page, patreon.com/DannyBallan, and let's keep the conversation going. And with that, my friends, we come to the end of our episode. That's a wrap on our anatomy of a great business plan. I hope I've convinced you that planning isn't a tedious chore, but a powerful act of creation. It's about giving your brilliant idea the strategic foundation it needs to not just launch, but to last. Now, if you want to continue this journey with me, and I certainly hope you do, the best way to do that is by becoming part of the English Plus ecosystem. Now, you can find transcripts for the episodes, deep dive articles, and there are magazine articles about a lot of different things that you can find on my website, EnglishPlusPodcast.com. And if you're enjoying the podcast, the most supportive thing you can do is unlock all of the content by subscribing to English Plus Premium. You can do that directly on Apple Podcasts, or you can do that on my Patreon page. Remember, my Patreon page is patreon.com/DannyBallan. Well, by doing that, you get access to the entire back catalog, bonus content, and so much more. And there are different tiers on my Patreon page, so check them out. The higher tier will give you access to even more things, and there are higher tiers just for supporters. So if you want to be that support, of course, I will definitely appreciate it. You're giving me a chance to continue this project, and the benefit is not only yours. The benefit is mine, of course. The benefit is for everyone who's listening to us and who might not be able to afford a subscription. Well, that being said, I would like to thank you very much for lending me your time and your curiosity today. Until next time, keep learning, keep planning, and keep building. I'm Danny, and this was a new episode from English Plus Podcast. Remember, never stop learning. I'll see you next time.